Welcome to History Decoded, the channel where we unravel the critical events of the past, one story at a time. Today, we're venturing into medieval Scotland, where a king, desperate to keep his throne, faced off against the might of the English military. This is the story of Robert the Bruce and the Battle of Loudoun Hill, a small but crucial clash in Scotland's long struggle for independence. Our story begins in the early 14th century. Scotland, a proud nation, had been embroiled in a war for independence for over a decade. English forces, led by King Edward I, had been trying to bring Scotland under English control. Edward I, often referred to as the Hammer of the Scots, was a man obsessed with Scotland's submission. For years, he had waged brutal campaigns to crush Scottish resistance. By 1306, after the death of the famous Scottish patriot William Wallace, it seemed that Scotland's hope for freedom had all but faded. But in that same year, Robert the Bruce, a Scottish nobleman, declared himself King of Scots. His coronation at Scone was a bold move, but it sparked a new chapter in the war. The English response was swift and severe. Bruce's forces were defeated at the Battle of Methven, and he became a fugitive, hunted relentlessly by English soldiers. Several of his supporters were captured and executed, and Bruce himself was forced into hiding. It seemed like the newly crowned king's cause might be lost before it had even begun. However, Robert the Bruce was not a man who gave up easily. After months of hiding and gathering strength in the harsh Scottish wilderness, Bruce began to emerge once again. This time, he adopted a strategy of guerrilla warfare, using small, mobile forces to attack isolated English outposts. Slowly but surely, his reputation grew, and with it, the loyalty of his followers. By 1307, Bruce had enough support to make a stand. His plan, a decisive victory to show his people and his enemies that Scotland's fight for independence was far from over. He chose Loudoun Hill, a strategically important location in Ayrshire, as the place where he would face the English army in open battle. Loudoun Hill was no random choice. Bruce, a shrewd tactician, recognized the importance of terrain in medieval warfare. The hill itself, a steep and rocky outcrop, dominated the landscape. It was surrounded by marshy ground and narrow passes, which would make it difficult for a larger army to maneuver, an advantage Bruce knew he could exploit. He needed a battlefield that would negate the overwhelming cavalry of the English army and force them into a tight, controlled engagement where his smaller force could fight on equal terms. The English force, led by Sir Aymer de Valence, a seasoned commander, marched confidently toward Loudoun Hill. De Valence had previously defeated Bruce at Methven and believed that he could easily crush the Scottish resistance once again. His army, consisting largely of heavy cavalry, was the backbone of the English military might. These mounted knights were feared across Europe, their charges often shattering infantry lines with sheer force. As the English approached Loudoun Hill, Bruce's men had already prepared the battlefield. They dug deep trenches on either side of the narrow road leading up to the hill, creating choke points where the English cavalry would be funneled into a narrow column, stripping them of their ability to use their superior numbers and maneuverability. Bruce also stationed his men in disciplined formations, armed with long spears, ready to hold the line against the English charge. On May 10th, 1307, the two armies faced off. It was a clear, tense morning. The English knights lined up, their polished armor gleaming in the sunlight as they prepared to charge. The Scots, though outnumbered and outgunned, stood firm, their spears pointed toward the enemy. It was the kind of battle that could make or break a kingdom. The English knights, accustomed to sweeping across open fields and breaking through enemy lines with brute force, launched their charge. As the thunder of hooves echoed across the battlefield, they soon realized that Loudoun Hill was no ordinary battlefield. The marshy ground and narrow causeway trapped them, their advance bogged down by the very terrain Bruce had chosen so carefully. The heavy cavalry, unable to maneuver freely, were forced to charge directly into the Scottish spear wall. Bruce's men, battle-hardened and disciplined, braced for impact. The English knights slammed into the Scottish line, but to their shock, the Scots held firm. Their long spears thrust upwards, unseating knights from their horses, while the ditches and obstacles caused confusion and chaos in the English ranks. Unable to retreat or regroup, the English cavalry found themselves trapped in a deadly bottleneck, their famed charge broken by the unyielding Scottish defense. As the battle wore on, the English losses mounted. The narrow field of battle allowed Bruce's forces to press their advantage, targeting the vulnerable, dismounted knights. Despite repeated attempts to break through, the English were unable to dislodge the Scots. One by one, the mighty knights of England fell, cut down by Bruce's determined warriors. Sir Aymer de Valence, seeing that the battle was turning into a disaster for his forces, ordered a retreat. The English, bloodied and beaten, withdrew from the battlefield, leaving behind many of their dead and wounded. Loudoun Hill had been a decisive victory for Robert the Bruce. Though small in scale, it was a momentous psychological victory for the Scots, proving that they could stand up to the English juggernaut. For Bruce, the victory at Loudoun Hill marked a turning point in his campaign. No longer a fugitive or a king in name only, he was now a leader with a legitimate claim to the Scottish throne. The win boosted morale across Scotland and sent a clear message. The fight for independence was far from over, and under Bruce's leadership, it had new life. But the importance of Loudoun Hill goes beyond just military success. It was a moment when Bruce solidified his leadership, not only as a warrior, but as a strategist who understood that brute force alone would not win Scotland's freedom. Thank you for watching History Decoded. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about the moments that shaped our world, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Join us next time as we explore another chapter in history's epic tale. Until then, stay curious and keep discovering the past.